Something in deep space has changed. Not slowly, not quietly, but in a way that makes scientists pause before they speak. A new anomaly has been confirmed, and it is tied to an object once believed to be simple, a traveler passing through the dark. Yet the latest update suggests this is not just another cosmic visitor. It is behaving differently. And when space stops following the rules we trust, one question rises above all others. What is really out there? Far beyond the pull of the sun, where darkness becomes endless and silence feels permanent, humanity placed a message into the unknown. Decades ago, a small machine was launched with hope, curiosity, and a golden record carrying the sounds of Earth. That machine kept moving. It crossed planets. It crossed the edge of our solar system. And eventually, it entered interstellar space, where no human-made object had ever gone before. For years, everything seemed predictable. Data flowed slowly but steadily. Signals were weak, yet understandable. Space was quiet, cold, and mostly empty. Scientists expected nothing dramatic. Just distance and time. Then the anomaly appeared. At first, it looked small. A strange shift in readings. A pattern that did not match normal space conditions. Instruments recorded subtle changes in charged particles and magnetic behavior. Nothing explosive. Nothing obvious. But enough to make experts look twice. Because in deep space, small differences matter. Soon after, attention turned toward a mysterious interstellar object now linked to the disturbance, 3I/Atlas. Originally labeled as another passing body from beyond our solar system, it was expected to glide through silently, like earlier visitors. No interaction. No story. Just motion. But the newest confirmation from NASA suggests something far more complex. This object is not behaving like a normal interstellar traveler. Its motion, timing, and surrounding signals hint at interaction, subtle, structured, and difficult to explain. Not proof of intelligence. Not proof of danger. But also not random. And in science, the most unsettling discoveries are rarely loud. They begin as quiet questions no one can answer. Why would a distant object show coordinated electromagnetic behavior? Why would deep space readings shift at the same time? And why now, after decades of silence? Some researchers call it coincidence. Others call it unknown physics. A few remain silent completely. Because history shows that the biggest discoveries often begin with something dismissed as noise. And if this anomaly is real, if it is connected, then humanity may be standing at the edge of a discovery far greater than a drifting rock in space. We may be witnessing the first sign that interstellar space is not as empty as we believed. But to understand why this moment matters, we must go back to the beginning, to the mission that carried Earth's voice into the darkness, and to the silent traveler still listening among the stars. Before this anomaly had a name, before strange signals stirred quiet concern, there was a mission built on pure human curiosity. It began in 1977, when a small spacecraft lifted away from Earth carrying instruments, dreams, and a message meant for beings we might never meet. That spacecraft would travel farther than anything humanity had ever created. It would outlive the world that launched it. And one day, it would become the only human voice drifting between the stars. That traveler is Voyager 1. When it launched, no one expected mystery. The goal was simple: study the outer planets, send back data, and slowly fade into silence. Yet the mission refused to end. After flying past Jupiter and Saturn, Voyager 1 kept moving outward, pulled by gravity and momentum into the unknown. Years turned into decades. The sun grew dim behind it. Finally, in 2012, it crossed the heliosphere, the invisible bubble created by solar wind, and entered true interstellar space. Humanity had reached the stars. Quietly. Without celebration. Without even realizing how important that moment would become. Attached to the spacecraft was the golden record, a copper disc filled with music, greetings, and sounds from Earth. Waves crashing. A heartbeat. Human laughter. It was never meant to receive a reply. It was simply proof that we existed. For a long time, Voyager 1's journey felt peaceful. Instruments measured cosmic rays, magnetic fields, and charged particles drifting through the darkness. Scientists learned how space behaves beyond the sun's protection. Everything followed expectation. Cold. Silent. empty. Then, decades later, a new traveler appeared, an object entering our solar system from interstellar space. It was catalogued as 3I/Atlas, suggesting it was the third known visitor from beyond our Sun. At first, this discovery felt routine. Interstellar objects pass through occasionally, shaped by distant stars and ancient collisions. Most are nothing more than frozen rock and dust. But this one arrived during a strange moment. Voyager 1's surrounding environment had already begun showing subtle irregularities. Small magnetic shifts, particle changes that did not fully match existing models. Nothing dramatic on its own. Yet when scientists compared timelines, the appearance of 3I/Atlas seemed close. Too close to ignore completely. Correlation is not proof. Science demands patience. Still, the coincidence created tension inside research circles. Because space events separated by billions of kilometers should not appear connected. Not easily. Not cleanly. And yet the data whispers the same quiet question. What if they are connected? Could an interstellar object influence space conditions so far away? Could unseen physics link distant regions of the cosmos? Or are we watching two separate mysteries unfold at the same time? Right now, no one can say for certain. But history teaches us something important. The universe often looks simple, until suddenly it doesn't. And if this is only the beginning, then the next discovery may change everything we believe about interstellar space. Out in the dark between stars, nothing is supposed to happen. Space beyond the sun is calm, thin, and almost perfectly silent. Scientists expected smooth data, slow changes, and endless quiet as the distant probe drifted farther away from home. But instead of silence, the readings began to shift. Not violently, not suddenly, just enough to feel wrong. And when something feels wrong in a place that should be empty, the mystery becomes impossible to ignore. The spacecraft continued moving forward at incredible speed, more than 60,000 kilometers per hour, yet even at that pace the distance between stars is so vast that progress feels slow. Every signal sent back to Earth takes many hours to arrive. Every tiny change in the environment must be studied carefully, because out there, small details are everything. For decades, the journey followed predictions. Cosmic radiation slowly increased. Solar influence faded. Magnetic fields became weaker and more chaotic, just as models suggested. This was the clean edge of interstellar space, the boundary where our sun's protection ends and the wider galaxy begins. Then the numbers stopped behaving normally. Sensors began detecting unexpected particle patterns. Not strong enough to signal danger, but too organized to be dismissed as noise. The magnetic field around the spacecraft showed subtle alignment shifts, almost like invisible currents were guiding charged particles along hidden paths. These were not dramatic spikes. They were gentle structures, repeating in ways natural turbulence usually does not. At first, engineers suspected aging instruments. After all, the spacecraft is older than many of the scientists studying it. Components weaken. Electronics drift. Space is harsh. But repeated checks showed the systems were still working correctly. The strange behavior was real. Even more puzzling, the timing of these changes did not match known solar cycles or cosmic events. Nothing nearby should be influencing that region strongly enough to create patterns. Interstellar space is simply too big, too empty, too far removed from local disturbances. Yet the patterns continued. Some researchers proposed unknown plasma waves traveling through the galaxy, slow ripples in charged particles stretching across unimaginable distances. Others wondered if the spacecraft had entered a transition region between different interstellar environments, like an ocean current boundary in space. These ideas were possible, but none explained the structured repetition appearing in the data. And structure always raises a deeper question. Because nature creates chaos easily, but organized signals are much harder to explain. Around the same period, astronomers tracking distant motion noticed something else unfolding in the inner solar system, the arrival of the interstellar object now called 3I/Atlas. Two separate mysteries. Two different locations. Yet the timeline overlapped in a way that made some scientists uneasy. Not proof. Not evidence. Just timing. Could invisible forces stretch across billions of kilometers? Could interstellar space carry information the way oceans carry waves? Or are we trying to connect events that only appear related? Science demands caution. But curiosity refuses to stay quiet. Because if the probe is no longer traveling through empty darkness, then something unseen may already be surrounding it. And the next discovery will decide whether this is strange physics or the first hint of something far more deliberate. The most unsettling discoveries in space are not explosions or bright flashes. They are whispers. Faint patterns hiding inside noise. Signals so small they almost disappear, until someone looks closely enough to realize they should not exist at all. And now, deep in the data returning from the darkness, scientists are seeing something that behaves less like chaos and more like an echo. For years, the distant probe transmitted simple scientific measurements, numbers describing particles, temperature, and magnetic fields drifting through interstellar space. Nothing dramatic. Just quiet information from the edge of the sun's influence. Engineers at Jet Propulsion Laboratory learned to expect weak, slow, but predictable signals. Then subtle repetition appeared. At first, it looked like interference, random fluctuations caused by distance or aging electronics. But repeated analysis showed the variations followed timing intervals that were too consistent to ignore. Not perfectly precise. Not artificial in any obvious way. Yet structured enough to raise concern. Imagine listening to wind in a forest, and slowly realizing the sound repeats in the same rhythm. Not loud, not clear, but present. That is what researchers began to notice in the electromagnetic environment surrounding the spacecraft. These were not messages. There was no language, no encoded symbols, nothing that could be called communication. But the organization of the signal energy suggested influence rather than randomness. Plasma waves in interstellar space can create patterns, yes, but usually irregular ones. Turbulent, messy, natural. This felt different. Some scientists proposed that the probe had entered a magnetic filament, a long, thin structure in the galaxy capable of guiding charged particles along invisible lines. If true, this would be a major discovery about how interstellar space is shaped. Others suggested shock waves from ancient stellar explosions still traveling through the galaxy after millions of years. Both ideas are scientifically possible. Neither fully explains the repeating echo. And then came the more uncomfortable question, one few researchers say out loud. What if the structure is responsive? Not intelligent. Not alive. But reacting in some unknown physical way to the spacecraft's presence, motion, or signals. A feedback effect we do not yet understand. Something that turns passive space into an interactive environment. Because the probe is not silent, T carries radio transmissions from Earth, T carries electrical systems still operating. And most symbolically of all, it carries a record announcing humanity's existence. If interstellar space contains regions sensitive to energy or frequency, the spacecraft could be doing more than drifting, it could be triggering something. Right now, this remains speculation. Careful. Unproven. Scientists continue to test every natural explanation first, as they should. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. But one truth is unavoidable. Space is behaving less like emptiness, and more like a medium capable of response. And if an echo truly exists in the static, the next question becomes impossible to avoid. What is creating it? If you're feeling the mystery deepen, make sure to subscribe and stay with us. Because the next chapter moves beyond physics, and into patterns humanity may have seen long before spaceflight ever existed. Long before rockets, before telescopes, before science had words for galaxies or atoms, humans were already looking up at the night sky with wonder and fear. Ancient civilizations across the world carved symbols into stone, aligned monuments with stars, and recorded strange cycles they could not fully explain. At the time, these patterns felt spiritual, mythical, sacred. But today, as modern instruments detect structured behavior in deep space, an uncomfortable question begins to rise again. What if the ancients were noticing something real? Across deserts, jungles, and forgotten ruins, the same idea appears again and again. The sky is not random, T moves with intention, T follows hidden order. Cultures separated by oceans described repeating celestial events, unusual lights, wandering stars, rhythms in the heavens that returned after long silence. Many of these stories were later explained by comets, planets, or eclipses. Science solved the mystery. Or so we believed. But not every pattern was simple. Some records describe cycles lasting far longer than a human lifetime, motions so slow they would be almost impossible to track without generations of careful observation. Why would ancient societies watch the sky with such patience unless they believed something important would return? Today, modern astronomy studies interstellar objects moving between stars, travelers like the newly observed 3I/Atlas. These bodies may wander the galaxy for millions of years before briefly entering a solar system like ours. To ancient eyes, such a return would feel supernatural. A visitor from the deep past. Now connect that ancient patience to the structured signals detected near humanity's farthest spacecraft. One mystery in the past point, one mystery in the present. Both centered on patterns that repeat across enormous time.